Hi, my name's Shane Johnson. I'm here with Aussie Tech Heads to do another interview. This week I've got another member of the Twit family, Iyaz Akhtar. Welcome aboard, Iyaz.
Thank you so much, Shane. I apologize for missing the last time. It was a bizarre scenario, but I'm really glad to be here today. And thank you for rescheduling with me because I'm really excited to talk to you guys.
Not a problem at all. Okay, so like we were sort of saying just before the interview proper kicked off, the format will be kind of informal, bit of a chat. I'll ask a couple of questions and hopefully it'll be more of a conversation rather than an interrogation. So we'll kick off.
Oh, I love interrogations, but okay, we can have a conversation. Let's do that instead.
I'll try and come across like mean or something just to make it feel like an interrogation.
Okay.
All right, so like I said, we'll break it up into two categories: a bit about you and a bit about the work that you do. I was interested to read that you have actually had an interest in tech for years. Like you, I think you did some work with PC Magazine. Is that right?
That's true. I worked for PC Mag for a short time. Before that, I was a blogger. I started writing while I was in law school around 2006. I was always interested in tech since I was a little kid, and my first experience with tech was this. I had this Radio Shack computer called a Tandy, and I got a new sound card. I was really excited about the sound card, and I installed it while the machine was on. Yeah,
not a good move.
Idea. Yeah, I fried the motherboard. So I learned when I was about 11 years old, never ever do that. And we got a letter from Radio Shack saying that your extended warranty is almost up. It turned out that machine was still insured, so we brought it back to the store. They gave us a new machine. They're like, your motherboard is fried, but since you're covered, here you go. So I've been into tech since I was a little kid. And then while I was in school, I wanted to write a little bit because I had opinions about technology, and I was learning to write for school, so I was like, I'll write up some tech stuff. And I ended up writing for the Apple blog, which eventually got bought by GigaOM. And I started a writing career like 2006 while I was in law school, which is a very bizarre scenario. But it was my hobby, and it became my job, so I'm just psyched to get to do what I get to do.
It's interesting that you bring up the law part of your career, so to speak. So if you already had the interest in tech and you were doing tech-related things, why the law degree?
Oh, well, if you can't tell, if you're listening to just the audio only, I'm a brown fellow, and my folks are from Pakistan. And one of the things you do if you're in that part of the world is you're either a lawyer or you're a doctor. That's what my mom told me. You get to be a lawyer or a doctor. My dad was a doctor. His father was a police officer, and my uncles were judges. So like there was all kinds of like successful people, and there's only again two things you do. They told me, lawyer or doctor, and I'm like, I have a bio degree. I had a bio major when I was in school, and I was like, I don't really care about science like this. It's like I love the Discovery Channel and I want to watch it that way, but I don't want to do this. I don't want to fix people. My hands are shaky. It's not a good thing for me to fix people. And so I was like, law. I love problem solving. Technology, one of the big things about my whole life has been solving problems when it comes to technology, or if I'm trying to figure out anything for anything. I mean, when it comes to science, you're talking about how to figure out how to get a video from the cloud to you. It's a whole lot of fun. It's all about problem solving. That's why I went to law school, because I loved problem solving. And law to me was incredibly interesting because it challenged me in a way that I hadn't seen. A lot of it was about like spatial recognition. Over here in the States, we have something called the LSAT. This is the law school aptitude test. And a lot of the questions are about like seating guests at a dinner table. And you're like, what does this have to do with law? And I had no idea how much the law works like a wedding table, because they all kind of sit next to each other and they all kind of interact. And if you figure that out, these relationships, then you'll understand law. And I went to law school with an intense interest in law. It just so happened that during the time I was studying for my bar exam, so I could practice law in New York, I started podcasting because I needed a creative outlet. I'm a creative guy. I've been drawing since I was 5. I used to draw a lot, and I used to make music, and I used to do all kinds of things. But I wanted to do a show because I listened to a show called Return of the Screensavers, Revenge of the Screensavers, back in like 2006 or so. I'm like, oh, I know those guys. I used to watch them on Tech TV. That's awesome. That's great. And I'm like, I can get a microphone and I can talk. Why not try it? And so while I was studying for the bar exam, I started podcasting about entertainment, and it was a lot of fun. And I had my best friend from college was my co-host. We are actually still doing that show now. We just restarted it like last week.
Oh, okay. So, actually, questions specifically about law that I've always wondered, and it's the same for medicine, I guess. Why do they refer to it as practicing law?
Because you never know what you're doing. The best thing about law is that it's a bit like a science, in the fact that the judicial statements that are done by courts, they're called opinions. And the reason why they're called opinions is opinions change. Just because it's been written out doesn't mean it can't change over time. And practicing law, things change. And, you really can't... there's no way you can come out of school... I don't care where you go. You can't come out of school thinking you know it all. What you do get to learn at law school, though, is you learn how to think. And then with this newfound information, how to think, you can set up the proper way to understand law and how it should be. You can always figure things out. That's the best thing about law. You learn how to do that. But you'll never know everything. And it's partly a philosophical concept, but you're always practicing. You'll never be perfect, but you'll practice. Okay.
And I guess that's the same for medicine, I suppose.
Oh, yes. Medicine, my dad was a doctor. My brother's a doctor, actually. A lot of that, yeah, it's a lot of... You never know more than reality. That's the best thing about law and science. Reality is a harsh thing. It doesn't matter what you think. Reality wins every time.
Okay. So has the law degree come in handy?
Surprisingly so. I thought it was a really great thing to have for Jeopardy. I watched the television show Jeopardy. I don't know if you have that there.
Well, you do, yeah.
Okay, well, it's a quiz show, and I love that stuff, and I know a lot of obscure things, thanks to my law degree and my other degrees. And like I said before, with law, it did teach me how to think and how to argue and how to see things from sides I wouldn't normally see. Because a lot of the stuff that happens in technology, to me as a consumer, is so strange that I can't fathom why on earth would anybody think it's a great idea. But I'm like, okay, well, if I had to think it's a good idea, why? And so even if I think it's an unpopular decision or I think it's crazy, at least I could look at that point of view and then try to understand it in a way that I can either explain it to somebody else or to say, here's what I think they're thinking, and here's why it's a good idea, here's what I think they're thinking, and here's why I think it's crazy. But it's an analysis that you learn. So law has been... It was a great experience, and I'm really glad I got to have it. Actually, I wish everybody got to learn the U.S. law, in the U.S. anyway, so they know the rules of the game that you're following. Because every day you're living... It's like you're playing a board game, but nobody tells you the rules. I mean, they're out there, but law school teaches you everything. You're like, oh, that's why I can't do that. Oh, I see. So it's been really helpful, surprisingly helpful in a career in talking into a microphone.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. The other thing that I noticed or found when I was doing research for you is, or on you, was that growing up at least, you had an interest in video games. Does that interest still... I guess most kids do, but I mean, does that interest still is that still there?
For video games, when I was growing up, I loved... Well, I grew up I was born in 79, so the first real video games I got to play with were the NES, and then arcade games like Street Fighter 2, things like that. And I loved going to arcades. Arcades are a dying thing out here in the States. And my interest in games is about the same as when I was about 6 or 7 years old. My big issues with video games at this point is that hearing that they take 40 to 80 hours to complete, that's a job. And I don't want to do that as a job. I like to play for fun. And I was I would get so much flack for this as a kid. I would play Super Mario Brothers, the original version, all the time. I'd get up to world, like, I think it's 8-2, and then quit. Because I just realized after like 2.5 hours that I was like, what am I doing with my day? Now, 8-3 is the final world. 8-2 is where I would stop. And I'm like, what am I should do something with my time. I'm a 6-year-old who's like apparently very upset about this. But the fact that these games take so much time out of your day, I was just shocked by that. And like, I would love to play a game. Like, I used to play this game with my brother. I used to play, Halo. I loved Halo. But like, I'm spatially the dumbest person on earth. I suck at maps. I am so bad at maps. So you put me in Halo, it'd take me like 2 hours to do something. It takes my brother to do about like 2 seconds. And so a 40-hour campaign takes me about 80. And I love video games, but I have a hard time believing that I'm going to spend 80 hours on a game if I'm good at it. And that's why I'm excited about like things like the Ouya and casual gaming, as they put it, sports games or head-to-head. I love playing head-to-head. I grew up, there was 4 of us when we were growing up. There was my older brother, older sister, myself, and my younger brother. And we'd always play multiplayer games because the amount of smack we would talk and the amount of things we'd bet on. It's like, if I beat this game, you're taking out the trash for a week. Like, that became a lot more fun than the actual game. I like to play sports games, like NHL hockey. That's a hockey game out here. Madden football, these things. But when it comes to like these mystical worlds, exploration, where you can get lost for hours, like sometimes I'm like, I should be mowing a lawn instead of playing a game. So it's I love video games, but they become so amazing that I know that myself, as an obsessive person, I would lose days, and I don't think that'd be good for the world.
Oh, okay. So really, it's almost like if you had a problem drinking, you make the choice, I will not to drink, because I know that when I get drunk, I act like a stupid idiot. As an obsessive person, I have to be very careful what I do. Yeah, it makes sense. All right, so the next question the next question I was going to ask, and it's a question that I ask everybody. It's just kind of one of those fun questions. Because you've got the law degree, and you touched on that you've got other degrees. You do the podcasting thing. You're known as a producer. You're a host. What do you actually put on government forms as your occupation when you fill those in? On the government forms, I am, and this is the weirdest thing to say, technically I'm an associate producer / host. Okay. And it's a strange one. I will agree conceptually, because like every time I explain that at a party, people are like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Can I borrow your phone so I can show you what I do?" And they're like, "And this works for you, and this is your job?" I'm like, "Yes," because I have a hard time believing it too. But that's I'm a producer / host, associate producer / host. I'm not an official producer. Yeah. Maybe I could ask for a title bump, but it doesn't really make a difference. But yeah, I'm a producer / host, and that's my actual on the form. That's what it says. Okay. Do you have any questions about that from immigration officers and whatnot? No. So far, so good. If they wanted to interview me, surely they can. And it's just a weird gig to have. It's I remember asking Tom a long time ago. I was talking to Tom Merritt, and I'm like, "Can I use you as a reference? I want to get a job somewhere." He's like, "Okay." I'm like, what do I write for you? He goes, "Well, write host at Twit." And I was like, "Just host?" And he's like, "Yep." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "That's a weird job to have, because I mean, what does that mean?" It's like, you just talk. I guess so. It's like, isn't it like you're seating people at a restaurant? Maybe that's what people think I do. Maybe they think I might work at a restaurant, and I'm just like, "You know what? Part of you too. I'm the host. You sit over there." Yeah. But I'm sure the IRS has. I'm sure they're not worried about somebody like me. No, probably not. So, moving on to, I guess, the work that you started to do with Twit. When you actually first joined Twit, did you go straight into the hosting, or did Leo want you kind of to cut your teeth on something else first? Let's see. So, I'm almost at my 2-year anniversary,
On the 28th of March will be my 2-year anniversary when I started at Twit. When I first started on the 28th, I wasn't on camera. I was actually helping do the lineup for TNT. I didn't show up until the 29th. Because back then Darren used to do Mondays. Darren Kitchen, who does Fridays now on TNT, was on Mondays. But to get the gig, I appeared on TNT a bunch of times so Leo can get a feel for me. And then they asked to put me on Twit, the big show. And I was on Twit on February 27th. I will never forget this because it was terrifying. And the idea was, could Iyaz hang with other people? So there's Leo, O'Malley, Kara Swisher of All Things D, and me. We're the 4-person panel, and I am freaking the fudge out. I am losing my mind because O'Malley is a hero of mine, Kara Swisher is a genius, and Leo's on this, and I'm just like, and I'm here. So here I am bringing down the awesomeness of the episode, and the episode went quite well, and Leo might have hired me live on air after the show. It was a bizarre scenario. He goes, "Oh, that was Iyaz Akhtar, and if you liked him, you're going to see him a lot on TNT." I get an IM from somebody saying, "Did you just get hired?" I'm like, "I don't know what just happened." Leo's a great guy. I love the guy, and I work with him on Know How, but he has a tendency to say things on air that a lot of people wouldn't. And there's nothing wrong with that. He lives with the camera, so I usually am very trepidatious when it comes to that. But so they let me, once I passed that little test I say, once I passed this major test, they gave me a job offer, and I got to go and do Tech News Today daily, and it's been fantastic. It's almost been 2 years. Next Thursday it'll be 2 years I've been working at Tech News Today, and it's been great.
Well, congratulations on your anniversary of sorts.
Thank you.
Speaking about the privacy thing, and Leo has kind of come unstuck a couple of times with the famous Mike Errington thing, and and then a couple of other probably more private things that he didn't want kind of to escape out into the ether. Do you? And you just said that you're not that sort of person. Does that worry you, the fact that you're kind of a public figure, at least within the tech community, and you've got to be extra cautious, or how do you handle that?
I don't find myself to be terribly cautious. I do take measures to make sure that phone numbers aren't shown off. Although last Thursday I accidentally did show off phone numbers on my Google Voice app, and I got an email from somebody telling me, "Hey, your numbers showed up on the app." I usually don't think about that, but before I start a show and I know my screen will be on, like on Know How, I usually quit out of chat apps and messaging apps and things because I don't need these things popping up, and I don't need attention being drawn away from the programming. I guess I don't worry so much about my personal life. I'm more worried that people aren't paying attention to what I'm doing. Like, if I'm telling you how to put together something, I would rather you paying attention to that, because that's the point of the show. What I do for my personal life, if you want to talk about it, that's fine. I have no issue with that. But this is not Know How is not about how to get a text message from me. It's about making a project you want to do. So if you watch the pre-show to Tech News Today, or the post-show, or the post-show to Know How, or the pre-show for that, I'm quite talkative about my personal life, and I don't really have an issue with that, because I like the way I live, so I will tell people about it. So if they want to know about it, I'm like, this is happening, this is going great, or this really is a bizarre scenario, and if I seem off on Tech News Today, it's because I broke my left foot or something. I haven't broken my left foot yet, knock on wood. But yeah, I don't have. There are personal things I want to keep, but I also, I don't think I would ever be as public as Leo. Leo, I love him, but there's no way I could be like, I can't put 100% out there. Maybe more like 60%. But I want to talk about the show. I like talking about the show. Before the show, after the show, we can talk about whatever.
Okay. Speaking of which, did you get to see that movie, 16 Candles?
I have not seen 16 Candles for some reason. Okay, now John Hughes has directed a ton of movies. right? This is a John Hughes movie, the 16 Candles movie. Now, for those of you who don't know what Shane's talking about, it was mentioned on Tech News Today that I have not watched 16 Candles, which stars, I believe, Molly Ringwald and John Cryer as Ducky. Is he Ducky in that movie?
I believe so. Molly Ringwald, she's the redhead, yeah?
Yes, so I believe that I don't know this movie by watching. I know by pop culture references. Now, my best friend in college was a John Hughes nut. I told him I hadn't seen Weird Science. He sat me down and made me watch Weird Science. I told him I hadn't watched whatever movie. Whatever the thing was. He was a 1980s VHS hoarder. We would watch every movie. I don't know why to this day I have never seen 16 Candles. I've seen like The Breakfast Club, and I've seen Weird Science. John Hughes did... Oh, what else did he do? He did a whole bunch of stuff. I'm forgetting it. But I have yet to see 16 Candles, and I don't know why. I will watch it. It's not on my list not to watch. It just hasn't come up yet.
Okay. Well, maybe, yeah. You're destined to, because, I mean, yeah, it's come up a couple of times in the last couple of weeks.
It's going to happen. I'm telling you right here. Here on this podcast, you've heard it before. I'm going to watch this movie, and I'm either going to love it, hate it, or not like it at all. I don't know it's going to be fun. John Hughes, he's such a schmaltzy guy. You know, you have these movies where they're like... Everything works out in John Hughes movies, so we'll see how this looks.
Did he do Ferris Bueller or not?
Was that Hughes? I thought that was... Well, maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just saying... It's the same kind of style, maybe. I just thought it might have been him.
Well, now I'm going to have to look it up. Right? Thank you. So I'll be looking over here. That's where my other screen is.
That's
IMDb.
Right. I'll just throw the next question here.
Ferris Bueller, which I could never spell. Let's see how this looks. Was this a John... Wait, I hit there was a short-lived TV show called Ferris Bueller. Yeah, not very good. Yes, you're right. Ferris Bueller's Day Off was John Hughes.
Oh, there you go.
I've seen that too. I did love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's a good classic. It's a classic, that one. All right, so I'm going to move on to kind of another section of the interview, specifically about podcasting.
Sure.
Can you explain the difference between producing a podcast like TNT and Know How, where it's obviously a big production, versus something like 2.5 Geeks or This Old Nerd or one of the other smaller podcasts that you've done?
Sure. Okay, so the first two shows you mentioned are Twit, and those shows, I get to just be the host. And in production of those shows, what I do for Tech News Today and Know How, a lot of it is about taking care of the content. Tech News Today, for people who don't know, a lot of the work I get to do is going through a ton of news stories per day and then deciding what we're going to talk about. We have a discussion section, and I get to pick 2 stories. Sarah gets to pick 2 stories. Tom gets to talk about 2 stories. This is in our discussion section. We might have every now and then a discussion as to what happens in the top 10 in the news fuse, but the news fuse is all about the top stories of the day that you should know. And for the most part, we always agree on that. So there's a lot of reading that goes on there. So we pick the stories, and we also need to know about each other's stories. So we read about those. So on the production side, it's a lot of reading. On Know How, a lot of it is similar, looking at emails, reading through that, and seeing what people want to see on the show, trying to find new ways to do things. And like, I think last week I had to come up with my own scenario, my own solution to something that I couldn't find an answer to. I wanted a light bulb to turn on when I got an SMS message from Google Voice. Now, that sounds simple, but apparently very difficult. Nobody had written about this, so I had to come up with my own scenario. I talked it over with my producer. We figured it out. So on the production side, that's what happens on the Twitch shows. When you're off the Twitch shows, at least on 2.5 Geeks or This Old Nerd, those are independently produced podcasts that I was on. And for 2.5 Geeks, I have a switcher. I can actually show it to you right here. This is a Korg controller, and what I would do is I would switch the inputs so that there'd be like, sorry, I put him on the mic. There was my friend Dave would be on 2, and my friend Marco would be on 3, and I would be back on 1, or I'd be on 9. And what I would do is I would be switching cameras live while we were talking on Wirecast. That would work with something called MIDI pipe. and I also had to worry about the microphone working, the cameras working, the Skype working, a lot of engineering stuff. This Old Nerd, same thing. I'd have a shot list of things we needed to make sure that we actually got shot. I actually worried about the publishing aspects. So on the producing side, much more involved when it came to non-Twitch shows, because not only are you hosting, but you are producing the program, making sure the shots are done, editing the programs, hosting them, making sure that they are working with RSS feeds. It's not even over then. You got to make sure that your show notes are accurate. So there's a lot more work on the independent side than it is at Twit, where you can be like, why doesn't this mic work? And then somebody comes over to help you. Like, when you're independent, it's like, why does this mic work? You're like, well, I don't know. What am I going to do? It's just you. Yeah. A lot of it's just you. And you learn a lot that way, but it's also maddening. Sometimes you're like, why does this wireless mic have a hit? Why is it making noise? And you can't be like, somebody do something. It's the difference between being like a homeowner and a landlord. Like, if you are a renter, like at Twit, it's like being a renter. And at being an independent producer, it's like being a homeowner. Just like, everything is my problem. Why doesn't this work? Because I got to fix it. It's really, it's a lot more work to be an independent producer.
I imagine it'd be a lot more rewarding, though, wouldn't it?
Is it rewarding? That's a good word. Sure, I'll use that word for it. It was a learning experience. You know a lot more. You have a lot of hands-on experience, and I think it's more of a relief not to have to do that. So I don't know if it's rewarding, but like you've been through the ringer, right? You know the troubles, and when something doesn't work at your other workplace, you know what's going. You're like, oh, is that not working? Is that why? You have a different problem-solving set because you've been on every stage, and I always think it's great when you have a scenario where anybody can solve a problem. It's always good. It's always good to have more brains on a problem than just one expert somewhere else that you don't have access to. So, I would definitely, I guess you're right, rewarding. I'm definitely better off for knowing what I know by being an independent producer, to know about RSS feeds, to know about production, to know about all of those things.
Okay, so the other thing that, again, I noticed when I was doing research for the interview is that there's a few videos on YouTube of you just doing stuff. I think you actually call them pointless. I think you've named them.
Oh, yes.
There was the one where you were developing that video thing for Ion, and what was the purpose of those? Was that to help you kind of get the hang of talking on camera and on a microphone, or what was that all about?
Okay, the pointless broadcasts. I used to do a bunch of. I should do them again. The pointless broadcasts. That was my username, I think, on Ustream, and because I thought there was no reason to ever stream, so I was like, "This is pointless." I somehow obtained the pointless username. So these are the pointless broadcasts from Ustream. And what I would start doing was I would just take questions from people at times. Sometimes people had, like, this would happen a lot during the show and after the show, as Tech News Today. People would ask me a bunch of personal questions, like, where are you from? What's going on? What's your background? Are you really a lawyer? What's going on? And I was just like, well, why don't I just talk to these people directly? Because, I mean, Twit is great, but I mean, they have to do show after show after show. And if people want to talk to me, I'll give them a chance. And so we even, a friend of mine, his name is Espen, he actually set up a chat room for me so people could ask me questions during these live broadcasts. And a lot of it was to test equipment as well, because I was testing out things for 2.5 Geeks. But it was just fun for me. Like, I just like connecting with people. And if my friends want to talk to me online, because I've never met them before, why not give them an opportunity to quickly to speak to me? The thing is, one of the reasons how I got into technology at all, at least the broadcasting side, was I used to be in the CNET chat room all the time.
Oh, okay.
And so the people that are in the chat room at Twit and some of the people that were in the chat room for me, like, I've known them for a very long time. They've just been like my friends. And it's weird that I haven't met some of these people and I don't know what their faces look like. Because to me, they have a handle. I'm like, yeah, of course I know you. Like, I take a bullet for you. You're my boy, that kind of thing. But it's that connection you build with people, and if I can give back to that, or like if I can just talk to somebody, be like, oh hey Henry Tap Shoes, my friend Henry Chu, he was his Tap Shoes in the CNET chat room. We became like really good friends. I don't even know how you do that in a chat room, but we just did, and like we met in person at a meetup, and we talk from time to time. He's on Instagram and whatever. It's just these connections you have. So one of the reasons I did the broadcast was just to keep a nice connection with my friends. And quite honestly, sometimes I'm lazy. I don't like to type. So I could be like, hey, I'll just talk right back to you. You wrote this thing down. Oh, you said that? I will answer you this way. Because I don't want to... This is a lot of work. I'm so bad at typing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it's kind of a... It's a weird feeling for me as well now that I've done a couple of these interviews, because up until these interviews, the whole Twit kind of family, and Rev3 for that matter, there's people on there that I kind of look up to, for the want of a better word, and to interact with them, it's almost like, I don't know, you follow a football team, and then you get to meet them and get autographs and all that kind of stuff. It's good but weird.
Oh yeah, I've had that back a couple of years ago. It must be actually maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. I got to meet Tom for the first time, and I'd known him on the CNET chat room, and he knew who I was, and I had done a parody of Tom's Top 5. Actually, it was called CNET Top 5 then, and he was doing a Top 5 or whatever, and I was doing a show with for Will Harris's company called Channel Flip Web, and we did a spotlight on a website, and we did a parody of Tom of the Top 5, and we even had Tom like show up on video. It was really cool, and so I show up in the meetup in New York to meet him, and I'm like, he's gonna yell at me because we mocked this thing. Okay, we stole the background stuff, we stole the animation, we took the music, we did everything exactly the same. This is a parody because we were because Tom seemed like he had a sense of humor, and then so we did the thing, and I meet him at the meetup, and I'm just like, I'm ready for him to yell at me because I'm like, I'm this jackass who just like trampled on this trust I had, and then he's like. He goes, my producer saw that. She loved it. This was amazing. It was hysterical. You guys were doing this thing and that. And I was just like...
Dodged a bullet.
Because I always thought he had a sense of humor. He does. Tom's got a great sense of humor. And for those of you who watch the show and they think... a lot of people think we have like a argumentative relationship. We're very good friends. We just argue because we like to argue. We get along just great. And... we're very, very similar, and so doing that was fantastic. Just to know that he wasn't mad at me about that. So there was that whole setup. If you've never watched this, go to I think it's called I don't even know. Oh geez, what's the blip site? If you go to finitecomedy.com, you can find the old versions of my show called Channel Flip Web, where I mock all kinds of things, including Tom. It was fantastic.
Just while we're talking about the old shows that you've done with Channel Flip and the independent stuff, and even with Ion, do you and the question is specific about Ion, but I guess it's applicable to everything. Do you maintain some sort of ownership of something like Ion? If you wanted to independently go out on your own and relaunch the show, can you do that, or does Leo say no? That's my it's my property.
You know, I haven't tried that yet. I think what I would, I don't think there's any technical limitations where I couldn't just do the show anyway. I don't know if I can call it the same thing, but what I would I think out of respect, I would just ask, would you mind if I just do the show elsewhere? But I don't believe I don't think there's anything in place that says what aired at that time is theirs or what's mine. So safety wise, I'd be like, I believe it's theirs. I was doing it with their stuff, but I don't think there's anything official when it comes to other programs that we've tried.
Okay, cool. What actually happened with Ion? Because I was it might be there now, but when I was doing the research a couple of weeks ago for this, I couldn't find Ion in the current or even the retired shows.
Well, yeah. So Ion was a beta. Ion was in other news. It was a bunch of news that was pretty much shelved from Tech News Today. Like Tech News Today, like I mentioned before. Like, we try to pick the most important stories. And a lot of the times you'd lose stories, and they never get covered because they're not news anymore, right? Monday, story number 11 is gone. Story number 15 is gone. Doesn't mean they weren't important. It just so happens that they just weren't as important as the other 14. And so we did a bunch of those things, and then eventually we just stopped doing the program just because like it was a lot of resources. We were using up a lot of resources that could be used better. And so just eventually stopped doing it, and then I ended up doing know-how. So like it's basically about time management. What's the best use of your people? And if we're going to use up editors and compressor on a Mac Pro or something, what's the best use of that? So that's pretty much what happened to that.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so just on the rolling back a little bit where you were doing your own thing, and I was under the impression that it may have been to kind of hone your skills. Have you actually done any media training, and do you recommend media training for this sort of work?
Media training. I have no media training whatsoever. My background is in, I have a bio degree and I have a law degree. Actually, I have 2 law degrees. I have a certificate in fixing cars. Media training. Wow. The only thing I've ever taken for media was learning Final Cut, and that was at the Apple Store for free because I needed to edit a program. I was an enthusiast for the longest time. I would look at videomaker.com and I would see how to set up video shoots, and I was fascinated with TV as a kid. I just loved the idea of this concept of, so you set up 3 cameras, and then people do stuff, and then you record this, and then people pay you to do this? Like, this is insane. What do you mean this is what people are doing? This is a job? I was just so enamored with this concept that to this day I still read about television. There's a bunch of books by Bill Carter that I read about, or I read, that had to do with like the late night wars at NBC and CBS. It's called The War for Late Night was another one between Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien. The Tonight Show debacle. I love the television industry. So my training, I would recommend it if you're going to go into like the editing stuff, the technical stuff. But I am completely not trained. But one of the things I got to learn, as you mentioned, like I did a bunch of podcasts and I did a bunch of things. The only thing that makes you better, I don't care how much training you have, the only thing that makes you better is doing it. Day in, day out. You practice by doing. Because you can create a scenario where you're like, oh yeah, this is kind of like the way it's going to be. Once you're actually doing it, things change. Lights are on you, cameras are on you, there are people there. Things change. So the only way you get to learn is with experience, which is hard to get. But that's why I did independent podcasts. I wanted to show that I can do this. But media training, somehow I got away with not doing any because it just wasn't in the cards. I probably should have taken advantage of that in my college. It just never came up.
Okay. Because I know that Leo has said a couple of times that if this twit thing kind of didn't happen, he would actually do media training. That would be something he would kind of fall back on. And I thought, as a result of that, maybe that's what he did with his staff, kind of thing.
No, I could never train anybody on this because, like, I'm just as clueless as everybody else. I'm just a guy who has opinions and loves to read about tech, and I just love technology, and I love having conversations about it. Okay. And so somehow that worked out. But I don't have training in this at all.
Yeah. Have you ever, given your legal background, have you ever done any episodes of This Week in Law?
Yes, I've done a couple of those, and I gotta say, the more years I get outside of law school, the more I don't know what's going on. But Twill is a fantastic program. I love being on it, and it feels like, don't ever take this the wrong way. If you're listening right now, you've never heard of This Week in Law at Twit, it feels like class to me at law school. You learn a lot at This Week in Law. You understand what's actually happening. The thing about the legal structure and technology, where they intersect, a lot of it's intellectual property, but there's a lot more to that when it comes to technology and law. Some of it's maddening, and you wonder why certain rules apply the way they do. And Twill does such a fantastic job breaking it down. I love being on the panel when they have me on. I've been on, I think, about maybe I want to say 4 times, 5 times. I don't know. They've been on 200 episodes. I've been on a bunch of them, but it is a great program, and the stuff you learn about the system, the legal system in that program, is broken down in a way that is simple. And one of the things that when I watch the show, because I do watch the show from time to time, some of the opinions by the other panelists will sound unpopular, and that's okay, because in that arena, it's about thought. And I love this thing. You need to know, like I was saying before, with law, you learn about every side, and that's very important, because then you actually have an understanding of what's going on. So I got to be on Twill a couple of times. It's been a great experience. Denise and Evan are fantastic. We have a great time every time we're on, and it's if you don't watch This Week in Law or don't listen to it, try it out. If you ever wonder what the heck's going on with the patent wars, and I know I make fun of this, we make fun of this in Tech News Today, Samsung suing Apple and why, they explain things in a way that's so simple is the wrong word. It's understandable. It's actually broken down so you understand it, and that's very important.
Okay. This isn't one of the questions that I had planned to ask, but the interview's kind of gone in this direction. And it came about when I was interviewing Tom a few weeks ago. I was surprised that given how tech things in generally are conceived, and the whole tech industry by and large is US based, that and this could be just a misconception about kind of the different cultures in general, but the general feeling is that it's very insular. But I mean, when I was talking to Tom about things like Julian Assange and the pricing issues that are going on over here in Australia, he knew exactly what I was talking about. Is that an area that you think maybe Twit needs to improve on? Are they too American focused? Do they have to be, because that's where everything is? Can they be more kind of internationally aware?
I think that when it comes to news, at least in at Twit, that if a story is big enough, it'll bubble up no matter what. And for the most part, obviously because of where we are in the United States, the U.S.-centric stories seem to bubble up on top. But we have seen a number of international stories show up. Julian Assange is a great example of that. The stories with what's going on with WikiLeaks, or what used to happen. Like when I used to work at PC Mag, I was very, very, very much involved in paying attention to what was going on there. These stories sometimes just burst through national borders, and sometimes I wonder if we should pay attention to something just because it's international, or whether it's just important. And I have a bias myself. Sometimes I will go to BBC and I'll make sure I go to international, not the U.S. version. So I want to see what's going on. So I think a lot of us have an eye on international sector. Whether Twit can improve on that, I think it's more about the stories that are actually affecting our audience at the time, and if a story is big enough, because we've covered this a couple of times, if a patent dispute actually disrupts an Apple product or a Samsung product in Germany, even though the majority of our audience is in the United States, we will report on it because this is actually important, because it might have an effect somewhere else. So these international precedents are something that we do keep an eye on. So I don't know if they can do a better job or we can do a better job, but I think it's something that we always are aware of, because we understand that even though it might seem, oh, that's over there, oh, that's silly. We don't think that. We think it's over there, but that's actually important, because that could have an impact here, and it's better to know a full picture. Because if we're like, what, we never saw this coming, boy, that's silly, like we look like morons. So we are paying attention to that, and the bigger the story is, those bubble up no matter what you do. There's nothing you can do to hide news.
Yeah, I guess the other motivation behind that sort of question is Leo's mentioned a couple of times that his plan for Twit in the future is to be a CNN of the tech industry, and I thought, well, to do that you have to kind of be more international than you appear to be. But I mean, like you said, if the story is important enough, it'll bubble to the top.
Yeah, that's what happens. CNN Tech is it's a hard thing to do, but we'll see where we go with that.
Yeah. Well, it's an objective, I suppose. It's a goal to try and reach. Just want to go back to and this kind of does tie in with the stories that you cover and topics of podcasting in general. Do you think that there's topics that work better than others, or do you think that it's just open slather, or what sort of things make a better podcast versus something that isn't so good?
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of podcast it is. If it's an audio podcast or a video podcast, that's a huge thing. I can talk about a small version of I can talk about specifically about tech news today. I'm not sure exactly where you want to go with this question, because I can go every which way. There's a billion things to talk about.
Well, I guess because part of the whole kind of theme of these interviews is to kind of encourage people to do podcasting and get into the industry. But
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So
what's a good topic or a bad topic? Is there any bad topic? I got to say this. It's not. I hesitate to say the phrase that it's not important what the topic is. But what I think is really important is a person that's behind the podcast that's actually passionate about whatever the topic is.
Yep.
So if you want to, you're like, what, there's nobody talks about this thing. I don't care about it either. I'm going to try to host a show about that. That might not work. There's a lot of tech podcasts out there, and there's a reason why there are certain shows that do better than others. It's because there are people that are really interested in these things versus people who think they're filling a need. So if you're going to, I don't know if any topic's actually off limits. If you want to talk about, for some reason, I'm looking at what's on my desk right now. I have a multivitamin here. If you're very into health, and you actually care about this, and you have thought about this, and you've done research, and you are passionate about it, it's that passion and that expertise that makes a podcast. It's not necessarily, it's not the topic. The topic is, again, the topics are very important because there are certain topics that might be very unpopular. You might not become you're not going to become the biggest host in the world because you are talking about the things at the end of a shoelace, right? What are these things called? Let's talk about this all day. That maybe not might not work, but passion is actually what's most important. Caring about what you're talking about, being knowledgeable, understanding that what you're talking about is important, and that what you think is important, and that people should know about these other things. But topics themselves, yes, think about a good topic. Try to think of what's a good idea. But if you don't care about that, that's going to come through. I promise you. Because if I was going to start a podcast about the paper industry, probably would suck.
Yep.
I don't care how good I am at what I do. I couldn't make that interesting because I'm just like, yeah, so paper, they took pulp and they took the water out and then they put a ream out. It's going to come through no matter what. So care about what you're doing, whatever the topic is.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I imagine that it would come across a little bit like, watching paint dry kind of thing if your heart wasn't in it.
If you love paint drying, you should really talk about, the physics of paint drying. I don't mean to be facetious here at all. I love physics. The physics of anything, fascinating to me. So if you actually can make that interesting and you care about the way paint dries, the way that water leaves another structure, if you care about that, you can explain that in a masterful way, go do that, because that's impressive. But if you can't, if you're like, paint dries, don't do it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So speaking about things that you're passionate about, outside of technology and your profession, what do you do? What are you into? You mentioned music a couple times. Yeah,
I love music. I used to be a very good guitar player. Back when I was in college, I started playing guitar when I was about 17, and I got pretty proficient by the age of about 22, and that dropped down a while. So I'm definitely nowhere near as good as I used to be 10 years ago, and that's one project I get to do on the side. I'm really passionate about just media. I get to watch. I like watching movies, and I love reading nonfiction books. I'm a weird. I don't read a lot of fiction.
Do you read or do you listen?
To what now? Oh no, I read. I will read on my Kindle.
Okay.
I don't listen to books because I don't have a commute. Like, I'm about a mile from work, so I read books when I get a chance. Let's see, what else I got to do?
Did you move to the area because of work, or were you already kind of living there anyway?
Oh no, I moved here because of work. I used to live in New York, and then I moved across the country for the Twit job because this is what I wanted to do. So, and I also hate commuting, so I moved right to Petaluma. So I live 1 mile from work, and it's been great. So like my whole commute is like I get to leave at 9:30 in the morning, and I'm on the show by 10 o'clock. So it's a fantastic experience because commutes. I hate commutes, and I know I'm known for hating things. That's one of the things I actually hate. I don't want to spend time in a car because I mean I like my car just fine, but who wants to spend time in a car? Like, I want to go do things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So how does someone who's living in New York get a job based in San Francisco?
You show up at the right place at the right time. I was supposed to meet up with Tom at a meetup for Twit. I got somewhat offered a job at the time. Tom points to me. We show up at a bar. Tom's looking at me and goes, "That's the guy I was talking about." And I'm like, "What is he saying about me?" We were good friends at that point. So I'm like, "What is he saying about me?" Because he could be talking smack. And then I'm offered a job right away. "Do you want to work at Twit?" I'm like, "Yeah. Why not?" Like, we just started working at PC Mag. I'm like, "Yeah, but I want this job." And then a couple months went by, and I told you about the test at Twit, on Twit, and then got the gig. And like I said, when they told me the job was over here, it's like, at the time there's rumors of a Twit East Coast, and I'm like, "Can I just do the show from New York?" And they're like, "Nah, we're staying on the West Coast." I'm like, "Okay, fine." And I'm like, "Well, I want to do this job. I want to work with these people. This is what I want to do." So it's crazy, but like, if you want to do what you want to do, sometimes you got to move. And I love it out here. It's March, it's beautiful outside, and like, it's like, I remember it was last year. I was driving around. It was February. I had the windows down, and February on the East Coast, where I'm from, it's normally like, oh geez, I'll try to make it international. It's like 0. It's freaking cold out in February, but over here it's probably like 22 degrees centigrade. Like, it is warm out here, and I'm like having the window open. I got my elbow out the window. I'm like, this is beautiful. I love it out here. So like, I've loved it being out here. It's pretty easy to get an East Coaster to move out to the West Coast if you hate the cold. And I'm not a fan of the cold. I've been in the cold, but I don't need to be there anymore.
Okay. So, were you taking a risk though? I mean, had you actually secured the job before you made the move?
Oh no, I had the job in place before I moved.
Okay.
I was not. I'm nuts. You're right, Shane. I am a nut. I'm a crazy guy, but I did not move out here without the job. So I had the job locked up, and then I moved out. Lots of things.
What's the work-life balance like for someone like yourself who's obviously got a young family, do what you do? There's obviously hours that you probably put into it outside of your official hours. I mean, does your family get annoyed?
Well, the work-life balance is it's weird because like I said, this used to be my hobby. If you're like, "Hey Iyaz, what are you doing right now?" Like, there's a good chance I was on Google Reader looking at my tech stories because I cared. Like, I always cared about that stuff. So that's kind of what I do now, even though Google Reader's dying, so I need to figure out a new plan. But anyway, I would do that anyway. That's what I used to do. So like, if I'm hanging out and my kids are running around, like, I might be looking at Reader and looking at tech. So I guess I'm always working because it's always my hobby. But every now and then, my son, whose vocabulary is growing, will say, "Daddy, iPad down, iPad on table," and then I got to do that. So he makes sure I'm balanced because he's vocal enough and he's verbalizing enough to this point where he can tell me, "Put it down, do this thing. Daddy, let's go play around, let's run. Daddy, fast." That's what we would do. We would run. So if I am not properly paying attention to the balance, my 2-year-old will tell me I am not. So it's there. He's happy, so I guess I'm doing okay.
Yeah, kids are kind of a real levelers when it comes to that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And you can't argue with them, so like, okay, you know what? You're right. I should be running around.
Yeah, true. All right, so just to kind of tidy things up and kind of as a conclusion of the interview, normally I have like a section where it's just kind of just for fun. Like with Tom, it was a word association thing. Brian did a magic trick. I think I mentioned in an earlier email, but I'm not sure whether you saw it or not. Do you happen to have your guitar handy?
I need to go get my guitar. I'll be right back. I keep my guitars on a wall, so...
Guitars, plural.
Oh yeah, I have a whole bunch.
I was a drummer in a past life.
What am I doing? You want me to play something?
Yeah, whether it's just your own thing or whether you want to play something that people might recognise. Don't tell people up front what it's going to be. We might sort of test people out and see if they can recognise the tune, and then at the end kind of tell us what it was.
Good gosh, I don't know anything. So let's see if my memory will let me do anything and make sure that this podcast gets taken down because I'll play a song that's very famous.
Oh yeah, I forgot
it's
about
acoustics. I don't know if it's going to come. Yeah, I used to play a lot, and I can't play at all these days. Especially when I'm on a microphone.
I think Eric Clapton is happy that you're actually now into the tech industry, because if you'd kept guitar going, he would have been shaking in his boots.
Clapton, I used to play a bit about. I used to play Crossroads. It was a lot of. I can never play this part right. Yeah, not happening tonight because my fingers are not moving fast enough for that tonight. I was playing guitar earlier today, putting the track together, but my fingers are just... I'm going to sound like an old man. I just don't move as fast as they used to. I think I need to talk to a doctor. Yeah. I
have the same problem. I haven't played drums for 10 years or something, and a couple of years ago someone asked me to play at some sort of Christmas thing. And yeah, it's like riding a bike, you never forget. And I was like, I had like 2 left feet, 2 left hands. I was useless. They ended up kicking me off. The bass guitarist who could play drums, he went and played the drums, and then his brother, who was in the audience, he could play guitar, but they thought, well, if you can play guitar, you can play bass guitar. And yeah, so I got sacked within about 30 seconds of my first song.
Yeah, my hands right now, they feel like they're cramping. Like I'm now an old man, 17 years of experience, and none of it is helping me because my fingers are like they're in a claw. It's all the typing. I will blame that and the fact that I suck at guitar. But yeah, I'm a very unpracticed guitar player. Now I want to play guitar all night. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so that concludes the formal part of the interview. Not unless I actually do have one more question that I do actually ask everybody, just to give them a chance to plug something. What's happening in the next kind of 12 months for you? Is there anything you do want to plug on Aussie Tech Heads?
Well, the thing I'll plug is I have a lot of things to plug. I will plug twit.tv/TNT, which is Tech News Today. If you ever wanted to know the news of the day when it comes to technology, TNT is a fantastic show for that. Before I was on it, I used to listen to it all the time, and now that I'm on it, I obviously am listening to it. But twit.tv/TNT. Me speak good. I speak better than this on the show, I hope. And then there's Know How, which I'd love to plug because we get to do fun projects every week. This week we got to do an amazing project, which I love, and people are like, this is stupid, but I love it. A visual notification for every time you got an SMS message. A lamp would turn on and off. People are like, why would I want that? Because I miss things. I wanted this. It's twit.tv/KH for Know How. And we show you all kinds of projects. If you want to put Ubuntu Touch on your Nexus 7, you could do that. We showed you how to do that. I learn a lot on the show, and it's a lot of fun, so try those shows out. And if you don't like any of those, go to twit.tv. There are a lot more shows to watch if you like technology.
True. Just actually a question on Know How, and it kind of does refer back to an email that I sent you a couple of days ago. How far ahead do you kind of plan those sorts of things? Because I know I mentioned a particular topic, and you said, oh yeah, it's coming, just kind of hang in there. yeah, are you planning months ahead, couple of weeks ahead, the day before?
We have a schedule set out about, what is now? It says 22nd or 23rd where you are. It's about 4 or 5 weeks ahead. And we'll talk about what we're going to be putting out at certain times. We've done a bunch of location shoots that we're deciding when they will go out. And we're planned out pretty far ahead. And the funny thing is, like, there's so many topics out there that you can cover almost anything, but we have to get through a lot of things before we get to those things. So we're about 5 weeks, 6 weeks out ahead. And then I think after those, like maybe next 2 weeks, we'll probably plan out another 8 weeks so we can get the equipment together. We want to do an overclocking episode with our friend at PC Per, Ryan Shrout. But we need to get the equipment in for that and resources for that. So we're planned out pretty far ahead. There's so many topics that people are just like, why aren't you doing this? It's like, we do one episode a week. If we did like 5, maybe we can get to everything everybody's talking about. We just can't get to it as fast as people want it.
That's a good thing, though, because that obviously means that the show's popular.
I hope so. I hope it keeps it popular. I mean, the thing about Know-How is that obviously it reminds me of the Screensavers and CNET's how-to show. You know, when you like messing around with things, I think our audience is a lot like me. I like not accepting things for what they are. Like, well, yeah, sure, that's what it could do. What else can it do? I can make it do this other thing. And, like, that's what I love about Know-How is that we do bizarre things that you shouldn't do with a light bulb. Like, why is that your Google Voice notifier? Because I can make it that. That's why. That's why my lamp is going off. Somebody's texting me right now. I know that's stupid, but that's the way it is. But yeah, I love that show. So it's a lot of fun to do.
That kind of reminds me, because I'm a Big Bang Theory fan, and there was an episode where the guys were controlling their power and remote control cars and all that kind of stuff over the internet, and Penny sort of said, well, why? And their answer was, because we can.
Because we can is a great answer for a lot of people. But sometimes you need to convince people, why are you doing this? Because why wouldn't you? Yeah. Sometimes I just think that's weird. It's like the Mount Everest question.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was there.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. All right, so I know I said that this about a minute ago, but that is the end of the formal part of the interview. So thanks again for your time. It got off to a little bit of a late start, and we had a hiccup a week or so ago, but we got there in the end, which is good. And like I said, thanks for joining us on Aussie Tech Heads, and thanks for spending just over an hour with us.
Well, thank you for having me on. I apologize for my guitar playing. I hope my other content was of use. The guitar playing, abysmal, I will say. And thank you for having me on. I had a great time. I love talking about this stuff, and it's a weird thing to be interviewed for anything. So thanks for thinking I'm viable for such a thing.